Hello, this is the 24th episode of What Would Peter Lynch Do, which explores the wisdom of legendary investor Peter Lynch. Today, we're diving into, well, a really old proverb, but one that's getting a very modern rethink. Don't give your children the fish you caught, but teach them how to fish. Now, traditionally, that's always meant, teaching self-reliance, wealth creation skills, not just handing over cash. But here's the twist, and it's a big one, especially in places like Korea and, yeah, right here in the US too. Education costs are just astronomical. It's making people ask this really fundamental question. What if, instead of sinking all that money into tuition, you invested it in stocks? Could your kid actually hit 30 with, say, $1 million, maybe more, instead of facing, crippling student loans? So this dilemma is really at the heart of our deep dive today. It came directly from one of you asking, which is better, teaching them how to fish versus leaving them a lump sum after investing in stocks for 30 years? Now, Peter Lynch didn't directly comment on this proverb, but his core ideas, his philosophy, well, they offer surprisingly relevant take. It suggests the best path isn't just about the money itself. It's more about a crucial mix of strategy and mindset. So we're going to unpack what our sources say, look at different angles, maybe uncover some surprising facts, and hopefully give you a clear structure to think about this. Let's get into it.
Yeah, you've really put your finger on it there. It's this kind of paradox, isn't it? We have this timeless wisdom, teach self-reliance, great. But the modern world, especially with these massive education costs in places like Korea and the U.S., it's creating some very real problems. We have to reevaluate.
Let's maybe break down some of those issues. First off, there's this growing worry about parental retirement security. We're seeing parents pour so much into education, private schools, tutors, university, that they actually end up struggling to fund their own retirement. It's a huge sacrifice, right? Investing everything in your child's future, but essentially leaving yourself, well, vulnerable later on.
That's a really tough spot for parents. And what about the kids themselves, the ones getting the education?
Well, that's the second big issue. The children often start their adult lives already behind, financially speaking. I mean, look at the U.S. total student loan debt. It's, what, over $1.7 trillion now? The average borrower owes something like $28,950.
Wow.
And that's just the average. Many, many graduates are dealing with way more, sometimes six figures easily. Gosh, starting out like that.
Exactly. It's like trying to start your career, maybe buy a house, start a family, but you're already carrying this huge weight. And this is happening when the whole idea of a stable, lifelong job, well, that's kind of faded, hasn't it? The new normal is constant change, adapting all the time. A degree isn't the guarantee it maybe once was.
So the investment in education, the teaching to fish, it doesn't always lead to financial stability, sometimes the opposite.
That's the paradox.
Mm.
It sometimes creates this huge debt burden instead. Just for context, a private nonprofit university, on average, costs around $41,540 a year.
And that's just tuition.
Just tuition and fees. That doesn't even cover room, board, books, living expenses. That can easily double it, or even more.
Okay, yeah. When you put it like that, you really do start to wonder about the return on that investment.
Mm.
So if that's the potential downside of the traditional path, what about this alternative, the idea of investing that money instead? Let's flip this around. Using the numbers from our sources, let's say someone invests $1,000 a month, which, sounds like a lot, but it could be similar to private school tuition or maybe part of what you've saved for college anyway, especially with extra tutoring and things.
Right, it's in the ballpark for many families' education spending.
So $1,000 a month starting from birth for 30 years. And let's assume a pretty conservative return, say 8% a year, which is, roughly the long-term average for the S&P 500.
A reasonable historical benchmark.
Over those 30 years, the total amount invested is $360,000. But magic happens with compounding.
Right, absolutely.
That $360,000 at 8% annually grows to roughly $1.49 million by age 30.
Yeah, nearly $1.5 million. So let's compare those two 30-year-olds directly.
Yeah.
Path A, you've got the graduate, they have their degree, which is great, but they might also have, let's say, $50,000, maybe $100,000, maybe even more in student debt.
Right.
Their first few years, maybe longer, are often just focused on paying that down. It delays everything, buying a home, maybe starting a business, saving for their own retirement. They're sort of fishing, but constantly bailing water.
Okay, got it. And path B.
Path B, the individual who received the investment instead. They start their 30s with a net worth close to $1.5 million. Zero debt from education, potentially. They can buy a house, maybe outright in some places. They can start a business without needing huge loans. They can reinvest. They have this incredible financial cushion.
Huge difference.
It's a massive difference.
Yeah.
They have choices and flexibility that the person in Path A just doesn't have for potentially many years. They're, fishing from a much, much nicer boat, maybe even a yacht.
That comparison is, well, it's incredibly stark. But, okay, playing devil's advocate here, what about the things you don't get if you skip that prestigious university experience? I mean, isn't there a risk the person with the $1.5 million hasn't learned the discipline, the critical thinking, maybe doesn't have the network that comes from a top school? Is money really everything?
That is a really important question, and it leads us straight into why this isn't just a simple numbers game.
Yeah.
The intangible benefits of prestigious universities, they're very real and quite valuable. You can't just dismiss them. Firstly, there's the network, access to an elite group of peers, and, crucially, alumni. These networks, particularly from Ivy League schools, can be incredibly powerful for careers, business ventures, getting information. Think Wall Street, Silicon Valley. Those connections matter a lot.
The who you know factor.
Exactly. Secondly, the degree itself acts as a kind of brand. It's a signal, a filter in the job market. It could definitely help get your foot in the door for interviews, especially for certain competitive fields. That reputation carries weight.
Makes sense.
Thirdly, there's the educational environment itself. We're talking world-class professors, amazing resources, state-of-the-art facilities, really smart, driven peers. That kind of environment, it really pushes you, fosters critical thinking, leadership skills.
Things that are hard to replicate elsewhere.
Very hard. And finally, there's a sort of social capital, a confidence boost. Graduating from a top school can instill a real sense of pride, which can positively impact how you approach things, your ambitions, your leadership potential. These are all real advantages.
Okay, so those are significant non-financial benefits. But then we hit the cost barrier again. Many people just assume Ivy League, that's only for the super rich. Is that actually true anymore?
That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions out there. The reality, especially for lower and even many middle-income families, is often quite different. Most of these top-tier private schools, the Ivy Leagues included, have enormous endowments, and they use that money for incredibly generous need-based financial aid.
Need-based, okay.
Yes. Many have what they call a 100% demonstrated need met policy. Basically, if you get in, they figure out what your family can reasonably afford to pay, and they cover the rest.
Cover the rest how? Loans.
Mostly through grants. That's the key. Grants are money you don't have to pay back.
Okay.
And even better, some of the wealthiest schools, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, for instance, have no loan policies. They actually replace the loan component of the aid package entirely with grants.
No loans at all?
For many students, yes. It means families below certain income levels, often around, say, $75,000 a year, sometimes higher, might pay absolutely zero. Nothing for tuition, room, board, fees.
Wow. That completely changes the calculation.
It really does. And significant aid extends well into middle-income brackets, too. Families earning, $150,000, $200,000 can still qualify for substantial help.
So the money might not be the biggest hurdle for many qualified students.
For many, the admission is the much bigger hurdle. Getting in is incredibly competitive. And yes, navigating the financial aid application process can be complex. But the idea that it's financially impossible for most families, that's largely a myth.
Okay, but what about that other concern you hear sometimes, the culture shock? A student gets in, gets full aid, but then feels totally out of place, maybe alienated because their background is so different. Is it still worth it then?
That's a really valid point. And yes, that experience can be challenging initially. Socioeconomic differences are real, and navigating that can be tough. However, if we look at the long-term impact, the opportunities for growth, the access, the influence, attending these schools, even with those initial difficulties, tends to offer profound advantages.
Like what specifically?
Well, think about maximizing potential. You have access to top resources, unique research opportunities. You're stimulated by incredibly bright peers. That pushes you. Then there's the social capital we talked about, that alumni network. For students from less privileged backgrounds, those connections can be life-changing, opening doors that might otherwise stay closed.
A real pathway for social mobility.
Absolutely. It remains a very powerful engine for social mobility in a society where, let's be honest, wealth often just gets passed down, and psychologically. Overcoming those challenges, the academic rigor, maybe the social adjustments, builds incredible resilience, problem-solving skills, and a deep sense of self-esteem. That pays dividends for life.
It makes you think. So even though people sometimes say the US isn't as obsessed with university names as, say, Korea, it sounds like there are still incredibly strong reasons why getting into a top US university is such a big goal for so many.
Precisely. It's not quite the same rigid hierarchy, perhaps, but that degree from a top institution, it's still a very powerful gate pass in many influential fields.
Like which ones?
Think about investment banking, management consulting, elite law firms, certain big tech roles, leadership tracks in major corporations. Recruitment for entry-level positions in those areas is heavily, heavily skewed towards a handful of top universities.
This gives you a huge advantage right at the start.
A massive advantage. Plus, think about perception. The media constantly highlights the Ivy League backgrounds of successful people. It subtly reinforces this connection. Success equals prestigious degree.
Right, you see it all the time.
And then there are parental expectations. Many parents see it as a validation, a status symbol, the best possible investment in their child's future.
And for the student themselves.
It offers incredible freedom of choice. A top degree opens doors to a much wider range of careers. And it acts like a kind of insurance policy. If one path doesn't work out, that degree often makes it easier to pivot. And of course, the educational environment itself is designed to foster innovation, critical thinking skills you need to become, a top executive or a successful entrepreneur down the line.
So in the US context, it's maybe less of a strict requirement, but more like a powerful catalyst, a really favorable starting point.
Exactly. A very powerful catalyst and a very favorable starting point. Not essential for success, certainly, but it undeniably helps in many influential spheres.
Okay, this brings back to Peter Lynch. We've looked at the financials, the intangibles. Where does his wisdom fit into this fish versus fishing rod debate?
Well, like you said, he never addressed this specific proverb head on. But if you look at his core investment philosophy, it really points towards a combination, a wise blend of both approaches.
How so?
Think about his emphasis on long-term investing. Buy good companies, hold them, let compounding work its magic over decades. That's very much aligned with the passing on caught fish idea.
Yeah, providing assets early so they can grow.
Exactly. Giving them that captor, that base, letting time do the heavy lifting through consistent early investment. But then, think about his other core message. Do your own research. Understand what you own. Investigate companies yourself. Use your everyday experience. Don't just follow the herd.
That sounds like teaching how to fish.
Precisely. It's about developing financial literacy, critical thinking, the ability to make independent judgments. It's not just giving them the money, but teaching them how to manage it, how to find opportunities, how to invest wisely themselves.
So use your own observations. Don't just rely on experts.
Right. Finding investment ideas in your daily life that focus on practical wisdom and observation, that's another form of teaching how to fish. It's about equipping them with the mindset and the tools.
So pulling it together, Lynch's philosophy seems to suggest.
It suggests you should probably do both. Teach how to fish. Impart that financial knowledge, the investment philosophy, the independent thinking, while also providing caught fish. Giving them assets through long-term investment from a very early age so they get the full benefit of compounding. Give them the capital and the knowledge to use it well.
That feels like a really balanced, practical approach. So it's not necessarily an either, but finding that optimal combination. Smart choices about education, maybe leveraging financial aid if possible, but also building that financial foundation early.
Exactly. It's about finding the right mix for your specific situation. But there's maybe one more layer to this, something often overlooked when we talk about legacy.
Oh, what's the...
That's what sociologists sometimes call cultural capital. Specifically, the family's attitude and understanding towards money itself.
Cultural capital regarding money. Tell me more.
It's the wisdom, the values, the habits around money that children just sort of absorb growing up. It's not taught like a class, it's lived. It includes things like, can you talk openly about money in the family? Is it taboo or is it a tool you discuss honestly? What are the family's values around spending versus saving? Do parents model why saving is important?
Okay, so it's about the environment.
Yes. And how investment is viewed. Is it scary? Or is it a normal way to make money work for you? How is debt perceived? Is all debt bad? Or is there good debt and bad debt? What about sharing or social responsibility with money?
Why is this cultural capital so important?
Because it shapes a child's fundamental relationship with money, often unconsciously. It influences their decisions, their stress levels, their values, their ability to handle wealth responsibly throughout their entire lives. You can give someone $1 million, But if they haven't absorbed a healthy attitude towards money, that wealth can disappear surprisingly quickly. This cultural capital, this mindset, that's what enables wealth to be sustained, maybe even grown, across generations. It's arguably the truest form of intergenerational wealth transfer.
And how do you build that?
It starts with conversations at home, normalizing money talk, parents setting an example through their own actions, sharing financial experiences, both good and bad, discussing the purpose of money beyond just buying things. It's absorbed naturally over time.
So it's not just about the fish or the fishing rod, but also about the wisdom to handle both properly.
Exactly. That cultural capital, transmitted through the family environment, is an incredibly important legacy. It provides a foundation of wisdom and values that helps them make the best use of any financial assets or practical skills that are passed down.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. So it seems the answer to our listener's question isn't simple. Inspired by Peter Lynch, it's about finding that harmony, providing the fish, the assets, maybe through early investment, teaching how to catch fish, the skills, financial literacy, maybe smart education choices, and crucially, instilling that wise attitude, the cultural capital, to manage it all effectively. It's really about empowering children holistically, giving them the tools, yes, but also the mindset to build a successful and meaningful life, whatever circumstances they face. See you next time.
This was What Would Peter Lynch Do? Thank you for joining us today. Have a nice day.